Sure. So it's my pleasure to invite the chairpersons for Surgical Retina 2, and we have a galaxy of stars and stalwarts. The chairman for the session would be Dr. Pramod Bende sir, co-chairman would be Dr. Natarajan sir, convener Dr. Botse sir. He's having a technical issue, he's trying to log in. So I'll request Dr. Preetham to stick around and I would be moderating the session. Without much delay of time, I invite Dr. Pramod Bende sir for his topic, surgical management of endophthalmitis. I would be too small to introduce him as he is my teacher, mentor, guide, and I have two teachers in front of me, Dr. Preetham sir and Bende sir. I would just like to refresh a memory that even after doing 10 cases in a day, tired at the end of the day at 7 o'clock, he will still look at his fellow, and he actually taught me how to hold the endo laser probe for the first time. How should be the wrist position? How should be the elbow position? Even at the end of the day when he's totally tired. So he's the teacher of teachers. So it's my pleasure to welcome you, sir.
Thank you, Sapnesh. Thanks for kind word. And it's always pleasure to be here. And MOS is like you have a still. I though I spent 30 years now in Chennai. I just look back now, and I still feel I'm still in Maharashtra. So it's always MOS and VOS is a part and parcel of justice. I can't miss that one. And it's again, it's probably it's a mutual always, Sapnesh. Nice to have a student when you feel really proud of Preetham, and when you look at it and you take back is like, yes, that is what satisfaction you get as a teacher. And when you see a student like you people, both of you. Yes, coming back to topic, we'll start like a case presentation. This is a 68-year-old female, had a phaco done elsewhere, diagnosed as endophthalmitis on third post-op day, got intravitreal injection, refer for further management, patient underwent. This was a finding on examination. Section was open. Basically, it's a ragged section. Rather than phaco, I would say the way it was looking like, though history says phaco, it was looking like a SICS ragged section. And sutures were not proper. Section was partly overriding, open, IOL was unstable, exudate in AC and hypopia. So we did a wound repair, vitrectomy, and IOL removal. Culture grew gram-negative bacilli, and this was a post-op day, reasonably acceptable outcome with the anterior chamber looking better now. Of course, congestion will take longer time to settle down. Another case, 57-year-old male, had a cataract surgery 1 week back and then reported with a massive exudation in the anterior chamber and congestion. Section was reasonably okay, holding on, and we did a vitrectomy and IOL removal in this eye, culture grew fungus. And this is like after your AC was subsequently, second zone and intravitreal voriconazole. Patient did respond, have a little bit hypopia, but eventually did well, but the persistent hypotony was the issue later on in this eye. So coming to surgical management, I'm just sticking to most of the surgical part. I'm not going back again, all definitions and everything. So intravitreal antibiotics is mainstay of management when you're dealing with the post-operative endophthalmitis. And generally severe cases, vitrectomy was indicated. So early vitrectomy or immediate vitrectomy you plan when there is no response to medical treatment, when the visual acuity is only light perception, media haze with a dense anterior chamber or vitreous exudation with a no retinal view, and we are suspecting fungus, or you have associated retained lens matter, because unless a RU inflammation is not going to subside, and you have underlying retinal detachment. Of course, retinal detachment underlying being a relative contraindication, I would say sometimes, because generally overall prognosis is bad, but you do not want to give up related few cases, you obviously would like to take a chance. And certain cases with a chronic endophthalmitis where a low virulence organism, okay, probably vitrectomy can be delayed, not in that rush. What is the rationally doing vitrectomy? It's removes the bulk of the infected material, removes endotoxin and exotoxins, and provides the material for microbiological test. And we have because your bulk is removed, so you have better access of antibiotics to microbials, and also helps to clear the medium. So while doing surgery, as I earlier said, that the first case presentation, ensure section is properly closed, and if necessary, you put additional suture when you're dealing with these eyes. If cornea can be hazy, view can be difficult, but if you debride the cornea, and sometimes surprisingly, view can be extremely good, and you do not have to worry about, don't have to plan PK as well. So membrane fibrin and an exudate in antechamber. Sometimes against you feel media is very hazy and you just want to need to do a stab incision and peel that membrane out, whether you want to use with a forceps or a bent needle or a cutter. But quite sometimes the moment the exudates are out, see cornea also shining, an excellent view of the fundus. To really do not have to remove the IOL in every case. 4mm or 6mm infusion cannula, it's a surgeon's take and his assessment on ultrasonography, what you see, whether choroidals are there or thickened choroid. If you are in doubt and he is not there, we do not hesitate to use 6mm infusion cannula. And always collect the sample for your microvitreous sample for your culture that you want to give you plan your antibiotic management when you're dealing with these eyes. So this is what just to show when you collect the sample to prevent this kind of decontamination or losing the sample. As you see, we put the cap, we expel the air again to get a antibiotic culture as well, put in the big test tube, and whole thing goes in a microbiology, which is fortunately for us is within our campus. Coming to vitrectomy, there are certain pulse what you use is basically we prefer to do as much debulking as possible, anterior-place sclerotomy, and given option, I would prefer not to induce PVD in most of the cases. Exceptions are there. And the end point of the surgery would be when I start seeing the retina or maybe first order vessels or optic disc, maybe I would stop at that level. Don't go too aggressively because retina is inflamed. There is high risk of creating retinal breaks. And this is what is end point for surgery for me. Okay, so use a low suction, high cut rate, because again, that helps you to minimize the tug on the retina, and minimize the iatrogenic complications. And at the end of surgery, we obviously broad spectrum on antibiotic and steroid cocktail is injected if you suspect bacterial infection. You avoid steroids if you are suspecting fungal infection. But giving antifungal, I would reserve till I get the smear report or culture report, because we know they are very toxic drugs. Removal of IOL is basically already inflamed. Removal can be very traumatic for the eye, and so and it's not necessary in all the cases. So you manage preferably without removing IOL. If necessary, and if infection doesn't get controlled, second sitting, you can always think of going ahead with IOL removal. But if view is very hazy, which precludes your vitrectomy, or capsular bag, our bag is source of infection and is full of exudate, obviously there is no other way you can access vitreous cavity or visualization without removing the IOL. And rarely, probably if you're dealing with fungal infection or your chronic end appointments, you suspect sequestration, again, that can be indications for a IOL removal one. Now, when you remove the IOL, sorry for a poor quality of video, basically it was a really bad case. So before removal, again, as I said, we try to remove the fibrin or exudate AC, and if you manage, that's fine. Otherwise, you just remove. And generally, I prefer sometimes exudation is so much, iris is stuck, probably sector irectomy, and gently just dial out the lens and suture the section back. Doing sector irectomy probably helped me to minimize the manipulation in already compromised eye and cornea. And both IOL and bag definitely goes to the culture. So post-operatively, you need a close monitoring for symptoms, and early symptom patient will say that my pain is less. That indicates that patient is responding. Continue topical and systemic antibiotics, antifungals, and steroids, and cycloplegics are also equally important. Repeat AC tap and intravitreal injection only if there is a persistent of inflammation or if there is a recurrence of vitreous fibrin. Most of the time, it may not be necessary if your antibiotics, organisms are sensitive to the antibiotic you are using. So there is a worsening in immediate post-operative period. It can be due to increased inflammation, not really worsening of infection, I would say, but it can be due to increased inflammation because of your surgical trauma. Now, evolving posterior highlight separation, so the exudates start coming in an anterivitreous cavity, and you feel subjectively as if the situation is worsening. Residual peripheral exudate can disperse. Again, it gives an impression of worsening. And of course, sometimes these eyes already decompensated cornea can further decompensate and situation as if you feel it's a worsening. But sometimes, yes, it is no response to the treatment and worsening is because of that, then probably you may need to consider revitrectomy, particularly when you have reaccumulation of lot of fibrin exudate in pupillary area, or sometimes head phase when you have PVDs involving, and basically purpose there is to clear the media. So also revitrectomy is advised when to address the late complications like pupillary membranes, vitreous debris, cyclitic or ciliary body detachment, gross hypotony, dislocated IOL, or if you have underlying detachment. So there are certain issues we still not having a consensus because of suppose whether early or delay vitrectomy to include induced PVD or not. Those can be debated. Combined vitrectomy and PK. Silicone oil use rather, I would say, I'll come to that. With a new MIVS techniques, we are more and more aggressive, and so the early vitrectomy is being done rather than what typically described by EVS study. Those guidelines usually we do not follow, and in every case now. PVD, as I said, I personally do not induce PVD, but if you have underlying detachment or having a extensive proliferation, probably once in a while we may have to debulk, we may have to take out vitreous, or mainly associated again trauma and foreign body. So if you are planning that, then probably what happens generally 360-degree laser along the aura and vitreous base, and then that situation probably silicone oil can be used as a tamponade, but without having a break, doing just complete vitrectomy using silicone oil. Dr. Lalit Verma and I think the other 3-4 colleagues of us, they are in favor of. There are 3-4 articles also there, and the rationale is that silicone oil itself may be antimicrobial potential, and it helps give a clear media, so better follow-up in post-operative period, and that's why early rehabilitation. But most of the time, these eyes need second surgery, and problem will be calculating the antibiotic dose in these eyes. So I'll stop, I think, here. When not to operate, basically when eye is no light perception, when you're having a underlying detachment on ultrasound, when patient reports to you, corneal calcification or abscess or melt scleral abscess, as you see particularly these cases, and most of these eyes probably eventually need evisceration. To conclude, good clinical evaluation and early initiation of treatment is critical. Intravitreal antimicrobial remains the mainstay of treatment. Choice of systemic antibiotic, obviously availability and option of the surgeons and his experience. Vitrectomy has a definite role in endophthalmitis management, and aim is to debulk as much of vitreous as possible safely. And with MIVS, early and more aggressive vitrectomy is being performed nowadays. We are getting better and better outcome. Thank you very much for patient hearing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. That was a superb overview on endophthalmitis, almost like covering the entire chapter, surgical chapter. I would invite our co-chairman, Dr. Natarajan sir and Lalit Verma sir for quick comments on the same topic.
After Nati, I think.
No, Lalit, after you.
No, Pramod has shown excellent videos, and I agree intravitreal antibiotics still should be learned everybody and form the mainstay of treatment to save these unfortunate eyes. I, for one, try to intervene early in severe cases, and because that helps to salvage these unfortunate eyes. And I try to peel off hyaloid, not at the cost of damaging the retina, but passively sometimes, or a mild suction with eye always on the retina. If you keep your eye, and it is possible to peel off hyaloid because there are sometimes posterior hyaloid pockets of pus there. So I try my best to do it in very severe cases. Not very happy and satisfied only seeing the disc. And I do indent in all of these patients and try to debulk the peripheral vitreous as far as possible. And I am a fond user of silicone oil in a lot of these severe endophthalmitis. We're not talking of mild or secondary vitrectomy, but very severe endophthalmitis where saving the eye is an issue. So because honestly, in private practice, people do not give you a second chance and they keep running from here to there. So 2 or 3 points I wanted to make: usage of oil and inducing and PVD, and early intervention and indentation. So these were my takes on this. And calculating dose, I'm not so finicky about, because it's a bad eye. It's such a virulent organism growing. So I'm not very finicky in calculating dose in silicone filled eyes, that I often end up using the same dose as in a non-silicone filled eye. So these were my few cents I thought I'll speak out. Yes.
Very good, Pramod and Lalit. I think the whole idea is to save, and I think we have to make a tailor-made for each case. And I think every patient, I don't do a hyaloid peeling as well as also the base. But I think that's where the surgeon's experience count. And I think that surgical self-education, what is good in your hand. But many times, I think it looks so bad, and without doing the basic excision, you do the vitrectomy, core vitrectomy, and then give the intravitreal. And I think you can see how the eye progresses. But many times they do even to 6 well, but depending on the virulence of the organism. So one is to have a microbiological support from when you take it from the OT and do something in your own OT. And then second is even sending for PCR. So in the next 24 hours, I think you can decide whether you have to re-intervene or not. As you rightly said, the endophthalmitis does not give you a chance, second chance. So you have to be very meticulous in planning. And at the same time, with your experience, I think you can decide which patient you need to do the hyaloid peeling. Because I think if every patient you do a hyaloid, you'll have a micro breaks which can happen maybe post vitrectomy because of the toxins which produces necrosis of retina. But good.
True, absolutely true. Because it's not every patient; it's case-to-case basis.
I agree.
Great.
So now I invite our second speaker. It's my pleasure to invite Subhadra Jalali Madam for her talk on new surgical scleral imbrication technique for complex RD with traction. And Madam needs no introduction. The sheer volume of work has made her a legendary surgeon and a very renowned teacher. Madam, please share your presentation.
Okay, I'll start with the movie. I'll start with the surgery first. Can you see the surgery?
Yes.
Okay. So we tag the muscles. Can you hear the audio? Otherwise, I'll speak.
Yes. No, we can't hear the audio.
Okay. So we tag the muscles like normal, and then you can see I'm just making 2 flaps. The flaps are made at the equator, but you can make it eccentrically also, depending on where the traction is. And the original scleral imbrication was spindle shaped, and I have modified it to make it square because I think that gives us more space. And it's very simple. Anybody can do it. Then just pass the sutures. So only be careful, because especially in small eyes, when you are putting the reverse suture, this one, you have to go little obliquely, otherwise you'll poke the sclera. So, I'm using the small retractor. As you see, these are small pediatric eyes. Now, the moment you remove a lot of sclera, the eye becomes soft. Just see how soft it becomes. This is without anything, but if you have doubt, you can always give mannitol, you can always do paracentesis. But most of the times, if you make good thick flaps, the sclera actually starts collapsing, and you can really imbricate quite a bit. So you can see here, we can make it tight. Okay. If there is a lot of fluid, you can drain. I will show that just now before you. Yeah. Now, so here I'm showing the drainage. So this patient had combined RD. So you can just do good amount of fluid can come out. Sometimes the fluid is very thick and you make an opening. If it is not very thick and it's a fresh RD, you can always do with a needle drainage. And the original scleral imbrication, does not put any buckle, but I am putting buckles on these. This is another modification, and you will see why it's being done. And the buckle and the imbrication, both, they can be done in 1 to 4 quadrants. All 4 quadrants can be done depending on the area of traction. So this is, I'll stop here. This is, So here you can see now we are putting the buckle. So the buckle size could be 42 band, or it could be a 240 band, or it could be a 287 or 279, depending on how deep the disease is. So that the surgery itself is not difficult. I think any retinal surgeon who is doing buckles can do this. The only thing is, one needs to have the conviction that this will work in the types of cases that I'm going to show. And these are all very complex detachments. Before I learned this surgery, thanks to my discussion with Dr. Gopal, Dr. Bende, and Dr. Mahesh Shanmugam, I started doing this surgery. I could not find this surgery like videos easily. So I just started doing myself only after discussions. And then later Mahesh Shanmugam, he sent one video. So I'm just going to show the types of detachments where this was done. So what happens is that, in ROP or FEVR, once we do the open sky vitrectomy, sorry, the lens sparing vitrectomy, and then we have given good vision. The story doesn't end there. They still have a lot of issues, and then they can come back later in life with reg RDs. And since I've been doing this surgery, I've also noticed that some of the acute ROP patients actually have convex detachments along with the traction. So they're actually coming in the acute stage also with reg RDs, if we look carefully. So this is one patient. He had FEVR. He's a PhD student, and this was his good eye. And you can see like what has happened. He has a big exudation here. There's a large area of traction. His macula is detached. If I do vitrectomy, which is what I was doing before, lensectomy, vitrectomy, trying to peel this off, chandelier, bimanual, 4-5 hours, and then you never know whether it's going to attach with 1 surgery, 2 surgeries, 3 surgeries, and you go on and on and on, transplant, everything you do. But these are really complex cases. Can it be done with single surgery? So I tried to see what is the history of, scleral imbrication in reg RD, and I was very surprised that in 1950s, this is the paper from 1959, which showed that they had 4/5 successful, reg RD detachments, especially with large breaks. And this was the time when still the buckling surgery had not come. So this is an old surgery, and as you see, they were doing spindle-shaped openings. What I'm doing is little square-shaped, and they said that these detachments actually attached. So recently, in the literature, there have been few reports from Japan where they have tried to do this surgery along with vitrectomy in complicated high myopia detachments. I could not find published reports on ROP detachments, but in my patient, you can see what happened. I just did the scleral imbrication, put a very broad buccal in the area. I thought there's a break because his inferior half was detached. You couldn't see any break, but there was a large VPRT. As you see, this exudation block was there. I did cryo for that. And post-op now, he's 20/30 and 6, single surgery, no oil, nothing. And his IOP was high for a couple of months, and we had to manage with multiple medications. Now at 1 year, he's off all medications, and he's completed his PhD. And he last week wanted to know, can he join corporate world and will his eye withstand? I think we have cured him for life. I don't think he's going to get any recurrence now. Single surgery. This is another one. This patient came from Latur 2 months ago. I had seen him when he was 3 years old. This is the pre-op picture. At 3 years, he had ROP, 1 eye blind, and this was his picture. And, now after 10 years, he comes. He doesn't come for 10 years. At 13 years, he comes to my colleague's clinic and, says that I have reduced vision for last few weeks. They just see and say, like, you have ROP and nothing to be done, but maybe you can come back and see madam after, 2 weeks or so. At 2 weeks, he has that faith, he comes back. And what I noticed in the clinic, he has a lot of nystagmus, vision is poor. But what I noticed was little bullous here. So then I took a fundus picture. So that's one lesson to learn in all these patients. Take fundus pictures. The fundus cameras really show you the pathology. And, if I went and did vitrectomy, I would be nowhere. This whole retina is so weak. There were 5 HST in the periphery. So I just did this technique, and you can see here at 6 weeks, everything is flat. He's very good. Now, if you're not convinced, you can see the pre-op and post-op B scans. Again, in all these patients who have traction, exudation, always do B scan because that will pick up the reg component of the disease. So you can see here, this was actually a reg RD, which has happened on the context of the traction. And you can see these are post-op pictures. Retina is nicely attached. The traction remains, fold remains. You don't have to do anything for that. The OCT shows retina is very nice. But the story still doesn't end there. You've attached the retina. And this boy, he goes to his local government hospital. He has, got a admission in Navodaya Vidyalaya. And this is the, certificate which the government doctor has given that he's unfit for admission to Navodaya Vidyalaya. He's fit for admission in blind school. The boy comes back. We see him in low vision clinic. His vision is 20/50 with the telescope. Unaided, he's 21/25 and 8. And he can read his refraction has changed from -7, which he had all his life, to -11. So I have given this certificate that child is very much fit to continue education in Navodaya Vidyalaya. He will need some help for low vision, but he has very good vision and he is quite bright and he should be able to carry on his studies. So that's the whole difference which a single surgery has made to the life of this boy and his family. Here's another patient. This patient had no reg RD, but he had a dense exudative and tractional RD, again 1-eyed patient, and we have done the same surgery, and this is about 1 month post-op. The exudates are decreasing, and the exudative RD has reattached. Another patient, he's a small child. He stopped playing 1 week ago at his early birth. I had done his surgery for stage 4B ROP. He's a phakic, and then suddenly now at 4 years of age, he has stopped playing. We could not take his fundus photo. He was crying all the time, but B-scan showed that now he has developed a reg RD in addition to the traction. And we did the same surgery, and you can see retina is attached, and he's back to normal playing happily. So I share this old wine in a new bottle with some added twist. Thank you.
That's a wonderful talk, Dr. Jalali madam, and a fantastic new concept. I just have one question when you were showing the slides to ask. Our routine conventional teaching is that when you're putting a buckle in a ROP, you normally remove it after 6 months because it could interfere with the growth of the eye. So vis-a-vis that, what is the implication of this scleral imbrication? Because the eye is growing, then could these proline cheese wire and could the imbrication be undone?
So although I have done only this for last 2 years now, I started during the lockdown. What I feel, because I have done very small children also now and adults also, and even the normal buckle that I'm doing in children, I'm not transecting in all children. I don't remove it. I did transection for many years. Now I don't. I only do it if there's some indication that actually I think if we have done imbrication, these eyes will not grow. I think they will not grow. I think we have stopped their growth, and that's fine. I mean, the retina will remain attached. But we have to see the long-term outcomes. As I said, one of the patients, he had high IOP for almost a year with 3 medications, but now at 1 year, I think his capacity has improved and he's off all medications. So what will be the long-term things happening to these patients? I have to see. We all have to see. But I think that I'm so excited. I have done 25 cases now. Only 1 case failed where I had to do vitrectomy, and everybody has done so well. I think this is some very good technique for us to do in these very complicated cases and not go inside and keep on struggling for multiple surgeries.
Can I add a couple of things?
Yeah, sir, please.
Yeah. So basically, now at what Dr. Subhadra Jalali said, similarly, not necessary all the cases we are doing encirclage. So particularly when you have a traction and particular quadrant limited one, so we put a buckle in that quadrant alone. So then you do not have to remove that one because now you do not have constricting effect. Okay, so you don't have to remove those buckles. So that's the one thing. And even imbrication also works more or less because she has few cases only 360, but most of the cases when you do imbrication, we do a 1 or 2 quadrant depending on where the traction is. And particularly Dr. Natarajan will agree with me, we all trained as a implant surgeons initially, not explant surgeon. When we are doing buckling, exactly what technique is Dr. Subhadra is doing as a scleral flap, and we suture those back. Exactly. So technically, yes, I agree. It's not that difficult surgery at all. And what she has done, an excellent video she has shown. And the same thing probably holds good, that because the sclera inner layers are infolded, that itself acts as a buckle rather than having an additional buckle element. Only concern I have here is if you are using a non-absorbable suture for imbrication and then putting a buckle over it, long term probably there is a risk of intrusion of the suture in the eye. So that we will have to watch it.
Yeah, the knots are on the flap. The knots are on the flap, so they have actually a double cover. So I don't think the knots will intrude. But yes, the length of the suture, that we have to see whether it will intrude or not. So let's see. Yeah.
Right. Thank you. So moving on to the next speaker, and that is none other than Dr. Natarajan sir himself. And welcome, sir. And he is going to speak on complex rhegmatogenous RD 3D vitrectomy.
Yes. I'll share my screen.
Yeah.
So my talk is on complex retinal detachment. There's no financial interest. And this is, I'm taking a retinal detachment with a trauma. And in trauma, we want strategic thinking, which is an individualized approach, and then a systematic approach based on scientific literature and genuine personal experience. As Parents Kuhn says, that no trial and error basis. So we approach the two-step approach. And then the first step is to do the good wound repair. That's what we recommend to all the primary ophthalmologists who can do that. And second step can be all the procedures. So we have here a 34-year male presented with the closed funnel retinal detachment with suprachoroidal hemorrhage following road traffic accident. A bimanual vitrectomy was done. And you will see the retinal you can see the retinal that was torn from the temporal side and was incarcerated to the nasal side, and the entire thing. Now I actually separated the nasal side also and used chandelier illumination, and then using two forceps and unfolding the retina, and found the space between the two folds, and then used the PFCL and flattened the retina. In the beginning of the surgery, it looked like that it's an inoperable one, but I think you have to make an attempt genuinely to see whether you can open up the funnel. It's like a closed funnel. RB it's almost like a 360-degree retinotomy done, and then you can see suprachoroidal hemorrhage partially drained, and then you can see some mound in the periphery, but you can settle the retina like this, and then this patient actually had a recurrence because of PVR. We removed oil, and then we did. You can see the pre-op and the post-op. The whole eye was cut into two parts, where you can see the entire cornea was central cornea was sutured, and then the patient came as said as no hope, and they was sent. And this is the pre-op and post-op. So my philosophy is eyes with no PL vision should always undergo primary repair, even when the anatomical success is estimated to be less than 1%. So you have to operate as though the patient can. This is again, in case you have a foreign body, I'm actually not going into the detail. I'll go to the retinal detachment associated with that. And this is the forceps designed by Mahesh Shanmugam and Manish Papaye, which were published in the Indian Journal for removing the foreign body, particularly the pellets, which we did in Kashmir. And this is a patient with a pellet injury where you can see the corneal wound repair well done by the corneal surgeon in Kashmir in the SMHS hospital. And then following that had a cataract. And in 8 days, we intervened. We did a phaco with a cataract procedure, and then removed there was submacular hemorrhage also. Here you can see there was a corneal wound, and it's a aphakic eye because the lensectomy was done at the primary time because the lens was totally damaged. And here you can see the pellet being removed within the vitreous hemorrhage, and then removed through the superior conjunctival and scleral incision, and brought it out, and then complete the vitreoretinal procedure. And even if there is a subretinal hemorrhage, I don't usually interfere. And here I'm removing the rest of the vitreous hemorrhage, which is there, and also do a thorough vitreous base excision. And many times you can have an exit wound, and in this case you'll be seeing where you can treat it like a coloboma choroid and retina, where you can do a laser around it, except the disc and the macula. And here you can see the exit wound is next to the optic disc, and the optic disc, the retina and macula was all right. So there was a laser done around the exit wound, and then the laser was not completed towards the macula and the optic nerve. And then you do a fluid air exchange, and you can leave it, and then have a secondary intraocular lens, either a scleral fixation or a iris claw lens fixed posterior surface of the iris. And this is the same patient with a cataract with a submacular hemorrhage post 6 weeks surgery. And here this is a traumatic retinal detachment with a expulsive hemorrhage which happened. And again, post-expulsive hemorrhage, you can see the remnants of cataract, the lens actually, and you do a AC maintainer, and then there was a vitreous hemorrhage, suprachoroidal hemorrhage, as well as subretinal hemorrhage. So here I'm making sure that the anterior segment is cleared of all the blood, and then you put a port to just check whether you can start the infusion through that. But you want to clear the entire vitreous hemorrhage around the port so that we don't have a supraocular effusion following the infusion, which is good. And here you see there's a total vitreous hemorrhage. There was no PVD, so you have induced PVD, and there was a retinal detachment you will be seeing where you can use the PFCL, squeeze out the suprachoroidal hemorrhage as well as settle the retina. So it will do a 2 job at a time, and then use the PFCL silicone oil exchange and inducing the PVD and removing the vitreous hemorrhage, and then there's an underlying retinal detachment, which you use the PFCL and do all the procedures to settle the retina, and at present using the retinal brush. So the problem is if you don't have a PVD and then you have a retinal detachment, I think it's a challenge, and that's where the force with use the retinal brush is good, so that you don't have the suction which is done. And you can see the anterior segment is again cleared using the PFCL to drain the suprachoroidal hemorrhage as well as reattach the retina. So I wanted to make sure that the air is filling the anterior part, and then rest of the area we can do the PFCL oil exchange. So here I use the wound and then finally sutured the corneal wound. And this is the post-operative picture with the fundus picture, and then this is other patient. And this is a traumatic endophthalmitis. This is total RD with a combined. So I planned a temporary keratoprosthesis, but you'll see that in this case, the endophthalmitis was necrotic tissues all around. And then the corneal surgeon, Dr. Kavita Rao, does the corneal button removal. But we couldn't do put a graft and do a temporary keratoprosthesis vitrectomy, but I did an open sky vitrectomy, toileted the wound, and didn't do anything for we didn't know what I was doing. So, and finally cleared the eye with all the infection, and then did a penetrating keratoplasty by Dr. Kavita, and then give the intravitreal at the conclusion. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Still
sir.
2 minutes are still there. Actually, that bell he rings is for 2 minutes.
Oh, okay, no problem. Yeah, so you can use the time for discussion.
Time for discussion.
So PB sir, your comments.
Yeah, and I think we don't have to make any comments. Excellent presentation. That all complicated surgeries, I think not much to really add. But yes, these are typical cases. And what I would suggest, patient counseling with the patient and attendant is very, very important, because when they pay, they expect dramatic results. And with a comparative cataract surgeries, now everybody expects that how visual outcome should be good. And you need a huge amount of patience on a surgeon's part. You cannot do these surgeries in a hurry. It takes time, take your own time. And yes, pre-surgery counseling, I think 2 things I would like to add here. Yes, sir.
So that's why I call myself as a vitreoretinal psychiatrist. I always tell the patient I spend a lot of time pre-surgery, and I said post-surgery, I have nothing to talk, I tell them. Because everything I said, if you see, thank God. And if you don't see also, thank God. And I said, you can feel both mentally and physically, I tell them.
I agree with Dr. Pramod. You see, Natti is unique and your patients are also unique. You see, because you see, you need to have guts. Our patient, if we don't promise anything, he will run away. So patients, because PL negative, last 3 surgeries were fantastic, Natti. Yeah. Virtually a lot of people may have, not done it, but you are bold enough to do it. So therefore I said, you are unique, your patients are unique.
I know. Actually, that's why that's the reason I want to, Vatsal has just joined. Vatsal is my boss in Bombay. Your comments. Vatsal, you are muted.
Dr. Vatsal, you are muted. We can't hear you.
He's trying, I think.
Nitin
Yes.
to reach that level, you have to reach level of Dr. Natarajan.
Yeah. Vatsal, yes.
Hi, Nitin.
Hello.
Good morning,
Can I
Dr.
just say
Nitin.
one thing, Dr. Natarajan? I think also some people are now doing endoscopic surgery for
Yes.
some of these cases because you had a difficulty in temporary keratosis. Especially, we also saw, if there was a wound which was sutured from the edge of the cornea and the sclera, then you can't put that prosthesis; it will leak. So
Right.
those are the cases where endoscopic surgery is really doing very good. Here, Rajiv and Vivek, the way they are doing. Raghavan also. So I think
my
that
endoscope
approach-
is not working. So I am not able to repair it because the company is closed and gone.
Naya kharido, sir.
Recently, I had a wire which went through the. Actually, it was seen in the AC, and then I think the resident probably did something and went inside. And then when the ultrasound showed it in the angle, then me and Dr. Sachin Darwekar searched. And I told Dr. Sachin, enough here, half an hour I searched, you can't find. Best is to send it to Dr. Rajiv. Then we sent to Dr. Rajiv because I otherwise couldn't see the foreign body at all. And it was a thin wire, it went. And finally he removed it. I think Rajiv, I have to remind him, we have to publish that. How we could see it pre-operative. And on the table before giving local, we could see. Then when he started doing something, it went somewhere. And he also searched both the scleral side. I went inside vitrectomy. I said, see, this is what I have to, my experience says that if you can't find in half an hour, I think I don't want to, I won't say waste of time. You're meddling more, you're damaging the tissue. I said, better, and patient was under local. I told the patient on the table, see, I can't find out. I'm going to close now. Dr. Sachin wants to try for some time, but after that, we are going to send you to Hyderabad. I called Rajiv immediately from the OT and his patient also accepted. And as a Pramod said, if you have a rapport with the patient and tell the fact from day immediately, there are sometimes patient gets upset, but later I think they actually believe you. I mean, that's the best part. Even now, me and Dr. Vatsal are treating one doctor patient. I mean, the patient, there are doctor, he told me, sir, you do anything. I went to everybody. I went to Vatsal also. Everybody told the same. Now, whatever happens, no problem. You do the third surgery.
Subhadra,
I had one worm in the AC. I saw it, I photographed it. By the time I put the sclerotomy, it went back. And then it was in the zonules. It had gone through the zonules and stuck in the zonules. And by the time I went behind, again, it came into AC. So it was very patient, but ultimately I caught it and took it out. But yeah, the endoscope, it's another armamentarium. If you haven't learned.
Yeah, actually, newer one are good. Actually, with the LED light source, illumination is very good. Okay, and I think, initial learning phase will be there because you are dealing with the 2-dimensional and 3 dimensions. So once you get used to, I think it's a good source. Of course, it has its own limitation. I think we are beyond scope of this, but it can be one of the options you're dealing with.
Subhadra, you were asking him to buy endoscopic. Nati, now you will buy or Amar will buy?
Amar will buy.
Bombay wale to khareed sakte hain, sir.
Lalit, I am only a pure surgeon.
We'll talk later. Otherwise, Preetham will get upset. Subhadra, one question to you.
One question.
Dr. Saswade also wants, 1 second, because Nitin, pardon me for 1 minute.
No problem.
Because Saswade also wanted, I also wanted. In all imbrication, do you necessarily put buckle or imbrication is good enough by itself?
In most of my cases, I have put a buckle. It could be a band or something. Very tiny babies, I have not put. Like, as I told that some of the patients in the acute phase of ROP are coming with traction and Regardie. But even there, most of the patients I have put a belt. Sometimes I have put a 42. Sometimes I have put 287.
Because it occurred because imbrication by and large produces itself a shortening procedure and a buckling effect.
That's what I wanted to say. Like, not necessarily. You can look at amount of traction. You can take a call, sir. How much is the elevation?
Yes, it depends on how much is the elevation. That last patient I showed, he had 5 HST in the periphery, and you could see the whole retina was so much pulled towards the disc. And even that adult, in adult, your imbrication is going to be less tight.
But all your cases were fantastic, and I am forced to try this technique now.
Please try. It's really good. I'm so happy. I'm so grateful to all my seniors from SN who have shown me that this can be done. It was only my mental block which thought that this will not work, especially when there's exudation. It works. You do your cryo and you do everything. It really works.
Great.
So now I invite Lalit Verma sir for his talk on kissing arcades. So please share your presentation.
So Pritam, let me know in case you can see so that I can move on.
Yes,
Yeah,
so we can see, sir.
we can see.
So this was a terminology which occurred to me by seeing this patient. This patient had undergone multiple surgeries. You see, I never saw an epiretinal membrane where arcades have become so close. So this patient had undergone multiple VR surgeries. ERMV, it's not very difficult to diagnose, and we heard in the previous surgical session fantastic videos by Saurabh. You see, the surgery also is not very taxing nowadays. After you peel off the hyaloid, the transferrin-assisted vitrectomy, key step is to identify this edge. And by and large, it's not a difficult job. One of the easiest surgery in today's era, and results also are very, very good. You see, this was another patient had ARMD plus. You see, notice in a lot of these patients which I am showing, the arcades are in its usual position. But patient has a disturbing metamorphopsia. That for me is the best indication. Here, I'm doing this transferrin-assisted vitrectomy. Then I put in air, and I'm very fond of putting under air the Reti-Blue dye, which is a concentrated form of trypan blue. It's not a routine trypan blue, but slightly more concentrated, available with DORC also. So I make this dry, posterior pole, then put one drop, wait for a couple of minutes, and this epiretinal membrane gets nicely stained. Then take it out under air itself. The excess of this Reti-Blue is taken under air itself, and then make it a fluid filled eye. And then the usual step is, I'm very fond of this 25 gauge MVR, which is blunted. This MVR is blunted. If you notice a small pick at the end of it, it's not a fresh MVR. And then once the edge is identified, you take off, and it generally, by and large, will come as a single sheet. This sheet is slightly more extensive than what you visualize on the. You see, arcade are wide apart, but patient has a disturbing metamorphopsia. And this sheet comes, and there's no need to inject any gas in these patients. You just do an air to exchange and come out. So this was another tougher membrane, but again, already operated multiple times. And this was a secondary ERM, I think, post the surgery. Again, similar steps, as I said before, under the air I'll put. Again, arcades are wide apart only. The vessels are not tortuous here. There is, I think, this is a small bubble of PFCL under the retina, which I didn't patch in during this surgery. But again, identify the edge and peel off the membrane. Sometimes you see it may give palpitations once it is slightly more strongly adherent. Here it was slightly. So I had a pause for some time, then went closer to the optic nerve. Always better to go closer to the retina and then attempt rather than pulling at the tip only. And extensive membrane comes out. So these are general results. A lot of times we combine with cataract surgery these patients, and results are very, very good. ILM peel, as I said, I do try, but do not insist at the cost of damaging. And also international literature also says that is not advantageous in all the ERM surgeries. We all get addicted to ILM surgeries, but it's not very. So a couple of more results. This was the patient who recovered excellent vision apart from his metamorphosis having gone. So this was the patient which forced him to consider kissing arcade. This patient had undergone 3-4 surgeries, and arcade was so close. I thought, should I do it or not? Vision was very, very poor, but I still attempted to do this surgery. Patient had, you see, compromised anterior segment also. But the only difference I did here was, instead of using a blunted MVR blade, I took a fresh MVR because I had to virtually incise over the posterior pole, sometimes over the fovea also. I have another video which I have not included here, where a vertical nick directly over like you see, this vertical blade is directly going, a fresh MVR blade. Otherwise, you will not be able to take out this. So it is required that you take a sharp MVR blade and incise, and do not worry too much because it's a thick membrane, and damage to retina, unless you are careless, it will generally not happen in these patients. So although the membrane is very, very thick, you have to be patient, as is true for all VR surgeries, and try to peel off. This I'm doing at the optic nerve head, but always go at the base again, catch hold at the base as shown here. And this is the area which I presume was the macula because of the yellowish tinge here. So I have to be careful that you don't do anything wrong here. But fortunately, because the macula is slightly down, is further down, and it came, I trimmed it because the grip was not coming up so good. And then hold it here. You can see the replica of macula here because macula side is slightly deeper. It's a saucer-like thing. And fortunately, although extensive, virtually all the quadrants, very, very thick also, but it came off. I don't think I damaged the macula in this patient. So I had to trim this. I did not have guts to go over the previous laser scars lest I induce a iatrogenic damage there. I did put silicone oil in this patient. Fortunately for me, the other step which I did here was, which was slightly different, was massage. Took this 2 diamond dusted forceps and mechanically tried to separate these. I think I missed that step here. You see here. So this I thought was important because whatever I want to do should be done here and do not depend only on the postoperative period and retinal elasticity that it will come. So then do the usual procedure. Fortunately for me, this patient is maintaining 6/24 vision, and although still I'm not very happy that arcades have gone back to natural position, and hopefully with time it may. So this is the pre and post of this kissing arcade, which I thought I'll share with you. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Dr. Verma, can I make a comment?
Yes, Sodra.
So this type of thing usually we see because there's a persistent fetal vasculature system there. We see this very common in our pediatric cases in FEBR, ROP. So whenever there's a persistent fetal vasculature, it will cause this type of complete narrowing of arcades, and it will be very thick. And most important is what you showed, that it will be adherent to the disc, and it may be adherent just to one edge of the disc, but its tentacles will be all around the disc and the peripapillary area on the nasal side. And then the macula will be heterotropic, as you showed. It's not in the fovea. The fovea is, it is heterotropic, and there the adhesion can be very strong. So in this case, it came out. Sometimes you have to cut with the scissors. So always near the fovea, be very careful. If it is pulling the fovea, then you cut with the scissors. Otherwise, you will create a break. So maybe if you ask this patient the history, there may be something in the other eye which will tell you that he had FEBR or ROP or one of those conditions which cause, or it could just be a PHB which is there. So whenever there is a persistent PHPV component in any of the RDs, it will cause this type of problem. So it would have been nice if you would have sent that for pathology. It would have shown you that it was not just a pure ERM, but it had some, remnants of something.
I have picture of the other eye of this patient. Fortunately, I did not see anything, but I think your points are well taken. Let me see in case I can show this picture of the other eye in this patient. This fundus photograph may not be there. Sorry.
But excellent surgery, Lalit. Very good. But I think as Subhadra said, routinely I send all the material to Dr. Bishwas routinely. Whatever it is, simple case, complicated like this, I always send it to him so that one day I think
this was the picture, Subhadra, of the other eye. Could not see any persistent vasculature, but you are right. I agree with you that we have to be very careful because this was a relatively younger patient, 19-year-old only.
Yeah.
And
even in this eye, the arcade is little narrower. Try to see the periphery. Try to see the periphery for any vitreous condensation. You can do an FFA in that eye and just see. You can see here also it is little narrow.
Good learning point. Subhadra pointed out very
just to add here also, cases where you do a temporal relaxing retinectomy rather, I would say, and that excessive scarring, you are close enough because retina get dragged because of scar contraction and will have those membranes pulling there. That is one. Also, what is important here is what you rightly do, very well shown, and actually excellent depiction here is like so many times people just think that membrane is over the fovea. Actually, fovea will be popping through the hole in the membrane, and you assume sometimes just directly poke there and pull there, you'll end up having a macular hole. So you have to start away and peel it up. You got membrane also, you see there's a nice hole. It is like a collar stud, like coming out things. So just ensure that when you don't go on a fovea, go around and it comes out. So like otherwise can easy to miss that one as a membrane because edematous macula, and you'll end up creating macular hole there on the table.
Absolutely, I agree. And thank you, Subhadra, for pointing out this very nice point.
So that was a great learning experience from
Manoj
Lalit
just
Sharma, sir.
asked one question. No, well, Manoj just asked whether to use shortened finesse loop instead of MER blade.
Yeah, finesse loop I do try, but I'm not very fond of finesse loop because it hasn't helped me in a great way in a lot of these dense ERM surgeries. Because finesse loops works for finer membranes, not for these very tough membranes. I agree with I have finesse loop always on my table, but I'm more happier with this bent MVR blade and sharper things rather than, you see, scratching the retina like this is not my cup of tea.
I think I am agree with you. I have similar experience. Somehow we are older generation now, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. I have grown old and I agree with your observation.
Lalit
But
Sharma,
whatever,
sir,
you see, what I would say is, whatever works best in your hand, Manoj, I would 100% agree. You see, there are younger people are doing fantastic job and excellent job, but one technique should not be made compulsory for everybody.
Yeah,
You should try finesse loop succeeds, well and good, A+. But if does not, don't hesitate to use this sharper also.
Thank you, sir.
And one other important thing is that there will always be retinal fold right from the disc. If you see carefully, Dr. Lalit, your video, towards the end, you could see there was a fold from the disc. So when you're holding these membranes, you have to be very careful. You don't hold the fold and you have to go over that fold. Always the retina will be folded under it.
Absolutely. Agreed. Very nice.
yeah, so excellent discussion and a great learning experience. For the dearth of time, I would move on to the last talk of the day. That is by Dr. Aditya Kelkar on intraop OCT, the third hand. And from all of us, we wish him again congratulations for winning the VK Chitnis Oration Award this year at MOSCON 2021.
And also Red Buckler Award from ASRS. Congratulations.
I think let's clap for him, all of us. Aditya, congratulations.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you.
Aditya,
So
I did
I-
see you in Pune. I'm in Pune now.
Oh, okay. So how long are you here, sir? So we can meet.
After the session.
Okay. All right. I hope you are able to see the screen.
Yeah, carry on.
Okay. So I'll present my experience of using the intraoperative OCT, and I have a video for that, and hopefully I'll be able to share the video with you, and hope you can enjoy it.
By the time the video is started, you can see the shine on your head.
That's because of the glow.
There's no sound.
Yeah. Just a second.
Throughout the world, there are ancient traditions that identify the center of the head as being synonymous with the center of the earth, the center of the universe, and the very center of creation itself. This center is often depicted as egg-shaped and is identified in some cultures as the third eye. Advent of ocular coherence tomography in the 1990s has been groundbreaking in ophthalmology. Over time, OCT has become an invaluable diagnostic tool in OPD, aiding in preoperative diagnosis and postoperative monitoring of many retinal diseases. Similarly, in the operating room, OCT has evolved from the earlier handheld model where surgeons needed to pause surgical procedures to acquire images, which increase the operative time and risk of contaminating the surgical field. Latest versions of microscope integrated OCT incorporate OCT optical pathway into the surgical microscope. And combining this technology to Barrow 3D heads-up viewing system, allows surgeons to view OCT images concurrently with surgical fields on 4K high-definition displays. Seamless integration of this technology into ophthalmic surgeons' toolbox has set a new paradigm in the surgical management of ophthalmic diseases. In the world of retinal surgeries, intraoperative OCT establishes a connection to the retinal rim. We share with you our experience with the IOCT, the third eye in retinal surgeries. While performing macular hole surgeries with inverted ILM flap technique, the flap gets displaced at times after fluid-air exchange, and this can be promptly picked up by IOCT. Surgeons can thereafter take the necessary steps to reposition it, as IOCT gives excellent image quality even after fluid-air exchange. When this dilemma presents itself, IOCT helps solve it on the operative table itself, ensuring smooth flow of the surgery. Retinal detachments in some cases can have coexisting tiny macular holes. IOCT can pick up even the smallest of the ones, thus allowing the surgeon to make adjustments to the surgical plan. Tackling vitreous hemorrhage leads one to wade into unknown waters, as preoperative OCT is not possible in these cases. IOCT is of tremendous help in such situations. It captures abnormalities such as epiretinal membrane or macular edema. This in turn helps the surgeon in customizing the procedure, such as clearing the ERM or adding anti-VEGF on table for the benefit of the patient. When in two minds about the completeness of ERM peeling, especially in cases with retinoschisis with atrophic macula, IOCT gives the much needed valuable feedback about the completion of the ERM removal. Not only the central macular area, IOCT is helpful in scanning the periphery as well. In a case of silicone oil removal, when one is faced with the doubt of an attached or detached retina, IOCT is helpful in such scenarios. Most of the retinal surgeries have transformed from the 20 gauge to the sophisticated 25 gauge instruments. These ports usually do not need sutures. IOCT here captures leak from the sclerotomy port, helpful in taking the prompt decision of suturing the wound leak. Alignment of autologous retinal graft over macular hole and demonstration of snug fit of the amniotic membrane graft in a case of optic pit surgery. Nuances of various surgical steps in this post-traumatic subinternal limiting membrane bleed, making it a very useful teaching tool. However, few limitations encountered are light scattering and shadowing effects due to surgical instruments, hence limiting its applicability, especially for peripheral pathologies. This hinders the visualization of the instrument-tissue interaction as well as the underlying tissues. Integration of OCT imaging technology into the vitreoretinal surgeon's surgical toolbox has made quite a revolution. It has shown to make a positive impact on surgical techniques, intraoperative decision-making, and distinguishing anatomical planes in various types of cases, such as retinal detachments and macular surgeries for enhanced safety and better outcomes. Hence, just like PFCL is said to be the third hand of retinal surgeons, we find it befitting to call the intraoperative OCT third eye of the retinal surgeons.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Dr. Aditya. That was a wonderful presentation. I would like to invite comments from PB sir and Natarajan sir.
Certainly, Aditya is a wonderful presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Really very well done. And I think just couple of limitations what you have added, I think that's completes the whole story. Because definitely, I think people are now coming up, certain companies are working on different type of materials, some plastic or acrylic acrylic-like material where the instrument, the shadow which is casting with a casting or the metallic instrument, particularly where you want to pick up the tissue, exactly there you get instrument shadow. And that's the major difficulty what we have with this. And I think newer instruments are coming away so having a without shadow we'll be able to manage. I think that adds on, I think we'll have a complete scenario then.
Yes, sir.
I think excellent. Aditya. Is there a learning curve using the, somehow I thought OCT.
The OCT, yeah, initially it takes a little while to get used to the foot switch controls. But once you're used to the foot switch, basically, I think we are dependent on the assistant to do the OCT. That's the mistake that I did initially. But there are foot switch controls in the microscope. So if you start using it initially, it will be a problem, but within about 5 cases, you will master it.
Okay.
There was another difficulty here because looking at particularly when you're using microscope, when you're concentrating on a surgery and you have a OCT coming next to it, so like refocusing there and looking at it, you get distracted. But with now 3D visualization, you are using Ingenuity and everything is one big screen and it's a one visual field. I think it's added advantage of Ingenuity, particularly when you have like intra OCT. I think definitely it will go together now.
Very, very convincing, Aditya. Very, very convincing. I also had similar apprehension what Pramod was saying, that distraction. But with Ingenuity and head-up surgery, I think this no longer is a limitation. Only thing is it keeps adding expense to already expensive VR surgery. But wonderful, wonderful, convincing video. I think it's a prize-winning anywhere on the earth.
So we would have loved to go on and hear more comments from the galaxy of stars who are present here. But for the dearth of time, I would request that we close this session and hand it over to the next IC. Once again, thank you to Dr. Pramod Bhinde sir, Natarajan sir, Preetham Samant sir, Lalit sir, Shubhadra ma'am, and Aditya for wonderful videos and a great learning experience for all the audience who is watching. Thank you so much for joining with us.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
And
you,
again, thank you and have a wonderful Diwali, everybody. Happy Diwali.
Thank you. Happy Diwali.
Same to you. Same to you, Pramod.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, bye-bye.